I once thought I was living a perfect life. A loving wife, stable job, and a relationship that was gradually improving with my stepdaughter. 5 years of building trust. 5 years of trying to be the best father I could be. But just one refusal of $5,000 destroyed everything. Disgusting accusations emerged. My wife believed them without evidence, and my life collapsed overnight. Before I tell this story, let me know where you are watching from, and do not forget to subscribe if you want to hear authentic stories about life. I met Amanda at a business conference 7 years ago. I was 35, focused on my career, and not looking for a relationship. But there was something about her warm smile and intelligent eyes that drew me in. We started talking during a networking session, and I found myself lingering longer than I had planned. When she mentioned having a 10-year-old daughter named Jessica, there was a slight hesitation in her voice. I could tell she was nervous about sharing this part of her life, perhaps worried it might scare me away. Many men might have been intimidated by the prospect of dating a single mother, but I was intrigued by her honesty and the obvious love she had for her daughter. Our first few months of dating were a delicate balancing act. Amanda was protective of Jessica, careful not to introduce too many new people into her life after the painful divorce she had experienced 3 years earlier. We would meet while Jessica was at school or having sleepovers at friends' houses. It was challenging, but I respected Amanda for putting her daughter first. The first time I met Jessica was at a casual lunch at a local burger place. She was quiet, observing me with cautious eyes while clutching her mother's hand under the table. I did not push for immediate connection, instead letting her set the pace of our relationship. I would bring small gifts occasionally, a book she mentioned, wanting to read a bracelet-making kit, when Amanda mentioned her interest in crafts. Not to buy her affection, but to show I was listening and cared about her interests. As months passed, I made consistent efforts to bond with Jessica. I took her to amusement parks, helped with homework, and even taught her how to ride a bike, something her biological father had never made time for. At first, she remained distant, responding to my questions with one-word answers and avoiding eye contact. But gradually, I noticed small changes. Her smiles came more easily. She would occasionally share stories from school without prompting, and sometimes she would sit next to me during movie nights. The moment that truly melted my heart came after 18 months of patient relationship building. We were at a community fair, and Jessica had just won a stuffed penguin at one of the game booths. With excitement shining in her eyes, she turned to me and said, "Dad, look what I got." It was the first time she had called me Dad, and though I tried to play it cool, Amanda later told me she saw tears in my eyes. Our wedding was small but meaningful, held in a garden with close friends and family. Jessica served as the junior bridesmaid, beaming with pride in her lavender dress as she scattered flower petals down the aisle. During the reception, she gave a surprise speech she had written herself, welcoming me officially into their family. There was not a dry eye in the venue. With our combined incomes, we purchased our first home in a quiet suburb, a modest 4-bedroom house with a backyard where Jessica could play. It was the first property I had ever owned after years of hard work and saving. I had climbed the corporate ladder to become a sales director at a software company, while Amanda worked part-time as an accountant, allowing her flexibility to be present for Jessica after school. Our first family vacation to Disney World, Jessica's 12th birthday party, where we surprised her with her first smartphone, our first Christmas together as an official family. These moments built the foundation of what I believed was an family decent, fair-play leisure, unshakable bond. I took my role as stepfather seriously, attending every parent-teacher conference, cheering at soccer games, and staying up late to help with science projects. I was especially proud when I helped Jessica overcome her fear of mathematics. She had been struggling with algebra, convinced she was simply bad at math. I spent weekends creating games that made equations fun, showing her how math applied to real-life scenarios she cared about. When her grades improved from a C- to an A, the pride in her eyes was worth every minute of effort. We settled into a comfortable routine. I was the primary financial provider, Amanda managed most household matters, and Jessica adapted well to her new life with a stepfather. I truly believed we had beaten the statistics about blended families failing, We were the exception, the success story. At least that is what I thought. 5 years into our marriage, Jessica turned 15 and subtle changes began to appear. At first they seemed like typical teenage behaviors. Mood swings increased, privacy spending more time with friends than family. But soon I noticed a troubling pattern forming. Jessica started hanging out with a new group of friends from the wealthier part of town. Zoe Harper was the ringleader daughter of a prominent surgeon who drove a brand new BMW to school, despite only having her license for 3 months. Taylor Bennett was another regular fixture whose parents owned a chain of luxury boutiques across the state. These girls flaunted designer clothes, the latest electronics, and took expensive weekend trips that made Jessica increasingly dissatisfied with our upper-middle-class lifestyle. The first red flag appeared when Jessica came home from a shopping trip with Zoe sporting a purse I recognized from a luxury brand advertisement. When I casually asked about it, she mumbled something about it being on sale, but I later discovered it cost nearly $800. Amanda had purchased it without consulting me, explaining that Jessica needed to fit in with her new social circle. It needed to not make her stand out or feel inferior, she argued. Soon, Jessica began demanding expensive clothes, makeup, and accessories. Her formerly modest clothing preferences were replaced by an obsession with brand names. The $30 jeans she once wore happily were now deemed unwearable. Only $200 designer versions would suffice. Her old phone suddenly embarrassed her despite being only a year old. She needed the newest model because everyone had it. While I worried about these shifting values, Amanda often gave in to Jessica's demands. She would explain to me privately, "I know it seems excessive, but teenage girls need to feel accepted. Remember how hard it was at that age. I do not want her to be bullied or excluded." I tried to be understanding, but I also wanted to teach Jessica about financial responsibility and that genuine friendships do not depend on material possessions. Our first significant disagreement came when Jessica requested $300 sneakers. I suggested she could earn part of the money by doing additional chores around the house. She looked at me like I had suggested she clean toilets with her toothbrush. "That's so unfair. No one else has to work for basic things," she had shouted before storming to her room. Later that week, I overheard Jessica on the phone with Zoe complaining about me. "My stepdad is so cheap. He works at some boring software company and acts like we are poor. Not like your dad, who is a real professional and understands quality things cost money." The words stung more than I cared to admit. Academic issues soon followed the materialistic demands. Jessica's grades began slipping, and one afternoon I received a call from school informing me she had skipped her last 3 classes. When confronted, she claimed she had felt sick and gone to the nurse's office, but a quick check with the school nurse disproved this story. Later, Jessica's social media showed pictures of her at the mall with Zoe and Taylor during those missing hours, trying on clothes and having smoothies. The school counselor requested a meeting after Jessica fell asleep in class multiple times. Miss Rodriguez expressed concern about Jessica's changing friend group and declining academic performance. "She is capable of excellent work, but her priorities seem to have shifted dramatically this semester," she explained, showing us a graph of Jessica's falling test scores. Whenever I attempted to discuss these issues, Amanda would become defensive. She would remind me that Jessica was not my biological daughter, that I could never truly understand what was best for her. These comments created a growing wedge between us. I felt increasingly like an outsider in my own home, watching helplessly as the sweet, thoughtful girl I had come to love transformed into someone I barely recognized. Jessica began avoiding family dinners, claiming she was not hungry or had too much homework. When she did join us, she would be glued to her phone, responding with grunts or eye rolls to any attempts at conversation. Our weekend movie nights, once a cherished tradition, were now met with sighs and complaints that the selected films were childish or boring. The situation reached a breaking point when Amanda and I had to travel out of town for her mother's 70th birthday. We trusted Jessica, now 16, to stay home alone for the weekend. We established clear rules: no friends over no leaving the house, except for emergency regular check-in calls. Upon returning, we discovered she had hosted a party that left our home with stained carpets, broken picture frames, and alcohol bottles hidden in the trash cans outside. The neighbors reported that over 20 teenagers had been there with loud music playing until 2 a.m. I wanted to implement consequences: no phone for a month, no social activities, and required chores to pay for the damages. Amanda agreed initially, but caved after 2 days of Jessica's tearful pleas and promises it would never happen again. The punishment was reduced to a weekend without her phone, which she spent sulking and making us feel like the unreasonable ones. As her 17th birthday approached, Jessica barely acknowledged me in the house. She had become a stranger, wearing the face of the little girl who once called me Dad with such affection. I mourned that loss silently, wondering where I had gone wrong and if our relationship could ever be repaired. One Saturday evening in April, I was surprised when Jessica voluntarily emerged from her room and offered to help me prepare dinner. Amanda was attending a colleague's retirement party, so it was just the two of us at home. Jessica seemed unusually cheerful, asking about my work and sharing stories from school that did not involve complaints. She had even taken the initiative to make a salad and set the table nicely, something she had not done in months. For a brief, hopeful moment, I thought perhaps we were turning a corner in our relationship. She asked about the project I was working on at the office, seeming genuinely interested as I explained the challenges we were facing with a new client. After dinner, as we were clearing dishes, Jessica casually mentioned, "So, there is this really amazing opportunity at school that I wanted to talk to you about." Her voice had that artificially sweet tone I had learned to recognize when she wanted something. She proceeded to tell me about a summer trip to Europe that her school's foreign language club was organizing. They'll visit Paris, Rome, Barcelona, and London over 3 weeks. It is super educational, she emphasized, all about cultural immersion and language practice. Her French teacher was leading it, and apparently almost everyone in her friend group was going. When I asked about the cost, she hesitated briefly before saying, "It's $5,000, but it covers everything. Flights, hotels, meals, museum passes, everything. And it's such a valuable experience, you know, colleges love seeing this kind of international exposure on applications." Something about her delivery felt rehearsed, and I found myself asking for more details. "When is the deadline for signing up? Where can I see the itinerary? Which teacher is organizing this?" Jessica became increasingly flustered with each question. She claimed the deadline was next week, but could not produce any paperwork. The itinerary was still being finalized, she said. When I asked for her French teacher's email to discuss the trip directly, she became visibly agitated. "I need to explain something to you, Jessica," I said gently. $5,000 is a significant amount of money. Right now we're saving for your college fund, which is a priority for us. Your education matters more than a summer trip, no matter how educational it might be. Her friendly demeanor vanished instantly. "You have the money," she snapped. "I know you do. You just do not want to spend it on me because I am not your real daughter." I tried to stay calm, explaining our family's financial situation more clearly. We had a mortgage, car payments, insurance, utilities, and the necessity of maintaining an emergency fund. Yes, I earned a good salary, but we were not wealthy enough to spend $5,000 impulsively. "Mom said you are just cheap," Jessica retorted, her eyes flashing with anger. "If I was your biological daughter, you would give me the money in a heartbeat. You are always trying to control everything with your stupid rules and budgets." I was taken aback by the sudden hostility. "Jessica, this has nothing to do with whether you are my biological child. I love you and want what's best for you. You are not my father," she screamed, cutting me off mid-sentence. "You have never been my father, and you never will be. I hate living under your rules." The door slammed as she stormed back to her room, leaving dinner half-eaten and my heart feeling like it had been ripped from my chest. When Amanda returned home later that night, Jessica had clearly already given her version of events. My wife was cold and distant, barely looking at me as she prepared for bed. When I tried to discuss what happened, she accused me of being unnecessarily harsh with Jessica. "You know how much this trip means to her," Amanda said, her voice tense. "All her friends are going. Do you want her to be the only one left behind because her stepfather is too controlling with money?" I showed Amanda our financial statements, explaining that a $5,000 unexpected expense would significantly impact our savings goals. But Amanda seemed uninterested in the practical aspects. She was more concerned with Jessica's feelings of rejection. Maybe you do treat her differently, because she is not your biological child, Amanda suggested, delivering the words like a physical blow. You never had kids of your own, so you do not understand what it means to sacrifice everything for them. That night I could not sleep. The accusation that I treated Jessica differently because she was my stepdaughter haunted me. Had I been unfair without realizing it? Was I being too rigid about money? These questions circled in my mind until dawn. The next morning, while Amanda and Jessica were out shopping, a peace offering from Amanda I suspected, I noticed Jessica's laptop open on the kitchen counter. A Facebook Messenger window was visible, showing a conversation with Zoe. "Do not worry about the Europe money," Jessica had written. "I have another way to get it if my stepdad keeps being difficult." Zoe's reply was equally disturbing. "Remember what we talked about. Men always cave when they are scared enough." An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. What exactly were they planning? I considered mentioning it to Amanda, but given her current attitude toward me, I doubted she would take my concerns seriously. The following days were unbearably tense. Jessica refused to speak to me directly, communicating only through Amanda when absolutely necessary. My wife became increasingly distant, often taking Jessica's side in even minor disagreements. I felt like a stranger in my own home, walking on eggshells, and wondering how our once happy family had unraveled so quickly. 2 weeks after the $5,000 argument, I received a frantic call from Amanda while at work. Her voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her. "You need to come home right now," she managed to say between sobs. Terrified that there had been an accident, I raced home, breaking speed limits and running a yellow light. When I burst through our front door, the scene that greeted me made my blood run cold. Amanda sat on the couch, crying uncontrollably. Jessica was beside her, eyes red and swollen. On the adjacent love seat sat Amanda's parents, Harold and Diane, both staring at me with undisguised hatred. "What happened? Is everyone okay?" I asked, still breathing hard from my sprint from the car. "How dare you show your face here?" Harold growled, rising to his feet. "If I were 20 years younger, I would knock you senseless." I looked at Amanda in confusion, but she could not meet my eyes. It was Diane who finally spoke, her voice trembling with fury. "Jessica told us everything, you disgusting man, about how you touched her inappropriately when Amanda was not home." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. My legs nearly gave out as I staggered backward. What I stammered, unable to process what I was hearing. "That's absolutely not true. I would never." "Save your lies," Harold shouted. "My granddaughter has no reason to make up something so horrible. We have already called a lawyer." I turned desperately to Jessica, who was now burying her face in Amanda's shoulder. "Jessica, please," I begged. "Tell them this is not true. You know this never happened. Stop intimidating her." Amanda finally spoke, her voice raw with emotion. "She has been terrified to tell me, afraid I would not believe her. But I do believe her. I believe my daughter." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My wife of 5 years, the woman who had slept beside me every night, who knew my character better than anyone, believed I was capable of such a reprehensible act. "Amanda, you know me," I pleaded. "How can you possibly think I would do something like this?" "I thought I knew you," she whispered, her eyes finally meeting mine, filled with disgust and betrayal. "I guess I was wrong." "We want you out of this house in 30 minutes, Harold declared. "Pack what you need for tonight and leave. If you are not gone by then, I am calling the police." My mind raced frantically. This could not be happening. There had to be some terrible misunderstanding. But the looks on their faces told me reasoning would be futile. In a daze, I went upstairs to our bedroom and grabbed a suitcase from the closet. With shaking hands, I packed enough clothes for a few days, my laptop, essential toiletries, and important documents. As I packed, I tried again to speak with Amanda, who had followed me upstairs, keeping a conspicuous distance. "Amanda, please, we need to talk about this. You know in your heart I would never hurt Jessica. There has to be another explanation." She stood in the doorway, arms crossed tightly across her chest. "The police detective will contact you tomorrow," she said flatly. "My lawyer advised me not to discuss anything with you directly. You should find your own attorney." Through it all, Jessica remained downstairs, never once looking me in the eye or acknowledging my desperate pleas for her to tell the truth. As I carried my suitcase down the stairs, I paused beside her. "Jessica, I do not know why you are saying these things, but they are not true." "You know they are not true." Harold stepped between us. "You do not speak to her," he warned. "Not one word." 27 minutes after arriving home, I was sitting in my car outside the house I had helped pay for the home where I thought I would grow old with my family. In the rearview mirror, I watched Harold close the curtains, shutting me out completely. I drove aimlessly for nearly an hour before checking into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. The room smelled of cigarettes and industrial cleaner, but I barely noticed. I tried calling Amanda repeatedly, but my calls went straight to voicemail. By morning, I discovered she had blocked my number entirely. Word spread quickly through our social circle. Friends I had known for years suddenly stopped responding to messages. Neighbors who used to wave and chat crossed the street to avoid me. At the grocery store, a mother pulled her child closer as I walked past, whispering something that made the little boy stare at me with wide, frightened eyes. 3 days after being forced from my home, my boss, Jeff, called me into his office. "Ramiro," he began uncomfortably, "I have heard some concerning allegations. I think it would be best if you took an indefinite leave of absence until this situation is resolved." I protested that I was innocent, that no formal charges had even been filed, but his mind was made up. Company policy, he claimed, though I had never seen such a policy in our employee handbook. That afternoon, I cleaned out my desk while coworkers watched silently from behind cubicle walls. With my income suddenly cut off, the financial strain became immediate and severe. I had to hire a lawyer, Sarah Mills, who specialized in false accusations. Her retainer alone nearly depleted my emergency savings. Each time we met, the meter was running at $300 per hour, but I had no choice. My freedom and reputation were at stake. Amanda filed for divorce almost immediately, with papers delivered to my motel by a stern-faced process server. Her lawyer demanded I relinquish all claims to our house and property, threatening to make Jessica's accusations public if I contested anything. The nightmare was only beginning. I barely slept, lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks, and jumped every time my phone rang, fearing it might be the police coming to arrest me. Each night I stared at the water-stained ceiling of my motel room, wondering how my life had imploded so completely, so quickly. Only 2 friends stood by me. Michael, my college roommate, who now lived 2 hours away, and Anthony, a colleague from a previous job. They were the only ones who questioned the allegations, who remembered the character I had demonstrated consistently for years. Without them, I am not sure I would have survived those darkest days. One night, after a particularly grueling meeting with my lawyer, where she explained the uphill battle we faced, I sat on the edge of the sagging motel bed and considered whether my life was worth continuing. The thought that I might never clear my name, that people would always look at me with suspicion and disgust, was almost too much to bear. I felt like a dead man walking my future, erased by lies I could not disprove. 3 weeks after being expelled from my home, I sat across from Michael and Anthony at a diner far from my neighborhood, where I was unlikely to encounter anyone who knew me. I had barely touched my food, pushing eggs around my plate while contemplating the bleak reality of my situation. "Ramiro, you cannot give up," Michael said, firmly interrupting my spiral of desperation. "We know you are innocent, and we are going to prove it, no matter what it takes." Anthony nodded in agreement. "You've always been there for us. Now it's our turn to be there for you. First step, you need a better lawyer. Sarah is good, but she is overwhelmed with cases. You need someone who specializes exactly in this type of situation." Through Anthony's legal connections, I was introduced to James Harrington, an attorney known for defending those falsely accused of crimes. His office was modest but professional, and unlike Sarah, he did not look at me with a hint of doubt in his eyes. After reviewing my case, James leaned forward, his expression serious but determined. "Mr. Vega, false accusations like these follow a pattern. They are usually motivated by revenge, financial gain, or attention. Our job is to establish your innocence by collecting solid evidence and investigating the accuser's motivation. If what you are telling me is true, there will be inconsistencies in Jessica's story." His methodical approach gave me the first glimmer of hope I'd felt in weeks. James immediately set about gathering evidence of my whereabouts during the times Jessica claimed the inappropriate behavior occurred. My work schedule, cell phone location data, and car GPS records could provide crucial alibis. Meanwhile, Michael spoke with our mutual friend who lived in my neighborhood. Through persistence and a convincing argument about justice, he managed to obtain security camera footage from their smart doorbell system. The timestamps aligned perfectly with one of the alleged incidents, showing I was not even home during that time but at a client meeting across town. Anthony, who worked in IT, helped recover deleted social media messages between Jessica, Zoe, and Taylor. What we found was shocking. In a private chat group, the girls had explicitly discussed how Jessica could get the money for their real summer plans after I refused the $5,000. What if you just make him scared enough to pay, Zoe had written. My cousin got her stepdad to buy her a car by threatening to tell her mom he was creepy around her. He paid up immediately. Jessica had initially resisted. Isn't that like blackmail or something? Taylor chimed in. Not if you just hint at it. You do not have to actually say anything specific. Just act uncomfortable around him. Make your mom notice. The conversations continued over several days, evolving from hints and suggestions to an explicit plan. They had even researched what kind of accusations would be most damaging and difficult to disprove. The calculated nature of their plan made me physically ill. More digging revealed the truth about the Europe trip. There was no school-sponsored journey. The real plan, as outlined in their messages, was for Jessica, Zoe, and Taylor to meet up with older boys they'd met online. One message mentioned Jessica's excitement about finally meeting Tyler, her 25-year-old online boyfriend, in person. The case broke wide open when Sophia, a classmate of Jessica's, who had been peripherally involved in their social group, contacted me through Anthony. Her conscience had been bothering her since learning how far the situation had escalated. I did not know they would take it this far, she admitted during our meeting with James present as a witness. It started as just talk about getting money for the trip to meet those guys they met on Instagram. But then Jessica came to school crying a few weeks ago, saying she could not go back on the accusation or she'd get in huge trouble. She made us all promise to back up her story if anyone asked. Armed with this evidence, James arranged a meeting with Amanda and her lawyer. I was not present for the initial conversation where James methodically laid out every piece of evidence we had gathered: the alibis, the recovered messages, the testimony from Sophia, and the proof that the Europe trip was a fabrication. Amanda was devastated. According to James, she had stared at the printouts of Jessica's messages in stunned silence, her hands shaking as she turned each page. When she finally spoke, her first question was not about me or our marriage, but a broken whisper. Why would she lie about something so serious? The following day, we all met at James' office. Amanda, Jessica, their lawyer James, and myself. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jessica would not look at anyone, her eyes fixed firmly on her lap. James began by calmly presenting all the evidence again, piece by piece. With each new revelation, Jessica seemed to shrink further into her chair. Finally, when confronted with the messages discussing their plan to falsely accuse me, she broke down. I did not mean for it to go this far, she sobbed, mascara streaming down her face. I was just so mad when you would not give me the money. Zoe said her cousin did something similar and it worked. I just wanted to scare you enough to change your mind. But then Grandma and Grandpa got involved, and Mom was so upset, and everything just exploded. I could not take it back. Amanda looked shell-shocked, tears streaming down her face as she listened to her daughter confess. I am so sorry, she whispered, finally meeting my eyes. I should have known. I should have trusted you. When a mother hears something like that about her child, something breaks inside. I felt numb, as Jessica continued explaining between sobs. The peer pressure from her wealthy friends, the online boyfriend. She was desperate to meet the escalating lies that spun out of control. She admitted that she had never intended for me to lose my job, or for the accusations to spread beyond our immediate family. She just wanted to scare me enough to give her the money. Why, I asked simply when she finished. We had a good relationship once. You called me Dad. How could you do this? Jessica struggled to articulate an answer. Everything changed when I started hanging out with Zoe and Taylor. They have all these amazing things, take these cool trips. Their parents give them whatever they want. I started feeling like our life was boring and limited. They made me feel like I deserved more better stuff, more freedom. When you said no to the money, it felt like you were saying no to me being happy. As painful as the confession was to hear it, provided the vindication I had desperately needed. By the end of the meeting, Jessica's statement had been recorded and signed. Amanda withdrew the divorce filing. My lawyer began the process of clearing my name with my employer and within our community. In the aftermath of Jessica's confession, I faced the most difficult decision of my life. Amanda begged for another chance, promising therapy for Jessica and a complete reevaluation of her parenting approach. She apologized profusely, explaining through tears how the accusation had triggered her deepest fears as a mother. "I will spend the rest of my life making this up to you," she vowed. "We can rebuild. Jessica knows she needs serious help, and she will face consequences for what she did. Please, Ramiro, do not throw away our family over one terrible mistake." I consulted with James about my options, as well as with Michael and Anthony, the only two people who had stood by me through the ordeal. The legal aspect was clear thanks to Jessica's signed confession and our mountain of evidence. I was completely cleared, no charges would be filed against me, and I had grounds to pursue damages if I wished. Jessica was required to transfer to a different school for her senior year and attend mandatory counseling sessions twice weekly. The school administration and police were informed about the false nature of the accusations, though we agreed not to press charges against her, to avoid creating a permanent record that would damage her future prospects. When I learned about Zoe and Taylor's roles in encouraging the false accusation, I insisted their parents be informed. Both girls faced serious consequences at home, including confiscation of their phones and social media access, community service hours, and required counseling. Jeff called personally to offer my job back, along with a formal apology from the company. He promised back pay for my forced leave of absence and assured me that my reputation within the firm would be fully restored. Despite these positive developments, I found myself unable to move past the betrayal. The image of Amanda looking at me with disgust, believing I was capable of harming her child, haunted me. How could I ever feel safe in that relationship again, knowing that her trust in me was so fragile it could shatter on the word of a teenager with an ulterior motive? "I do not want to punish Jessica," I explained to James. "She's young, made a terrible mistake, and will have to live with the knowledge of what she did. But I cannot return to a marriage where my wife did not trust me enough to at least question such a serious accusation." The divorce proceeded, though I insisted on fair terms. I wanted no revenge, no punishment, just a clean break. Amanda agreed to sell the house and split the proceeds along with our other assets. The process was amicable if heartbreaking. Before I moved to another city to start fresh, I had one final meeting with Jessica at a coffee shop with Amanda's permission. She had lost weight, and the confident, sometimes arrogant teenager had been replaced by a subdued young woman who could barely meet my gaze. "I just wanted to say goodbye," I told her, "and to tell you that while I cannot forget what happened, I do forgive you." "Why?" she asked, genuine confusion in her reddened eyes. "Why would you forgive me after what I did to you?" "Because holding on to anger would only poison my future," I explained. "And because despite everything I still care about what happens to you. I hope you'll learn from this, Jessica. Words have power. Lies have consequences. Sometimes they destroy lives." She nodded, tears spilling onto the tabletop. "I will never do anything like this again," she promised. "I am so sorry, Dad. I know I do not get to call you that anymore, but that's still how I think of you." Those words pierced my heart, but I knew my decision was right. Some broken things cannot be repaired, no matter how much we wish they could be. With Michael's help, I found a position at a company in Portland, 3 states away. Anthony helped me move, spending a weekend loading a U-Haul with the possessions I had accumulated during my time in the motel, a sad collection that represented the remnants of my former life. Starting over at 38 was not easy. There were nights I lay awake wondering if I had made the right choice, if I should have tried harder to rebuild my marriage. But gradually, I established a new routine, made new friends, and slowly began to trust people again. 2 years after leaving, I received an email from Jessica. She was attending community college, working part-time at a bookstore, and continuing with therapy. Her message was thoughtful and mature, updating me on her life, without asking for anything in return. I responded briefly but kindly, wishing her well in her studies. I doubt we will ever have a relationship again, but I take some comfort in knowing she seems to be finding a healthier path forward. As for me, I volunteer now with an organization that supports those falsely accused of crimes. Each person I help feels like reclaiming a small piece of what was taken from me. If this story teaches anything, it is the devastating power of lies and the dangers of judgment without evidence. Trust is fragile, built slowly over years but capable of being shattered in an instant. And while forgiveness is possible, some wounds leave scars that never fully fade. I have learned that sometimes life falls apart not to punish us, but to show us how to build something stronger from the rubble. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after someone you trusted betrayed you? Let me know in the comments. And if my story resonated with you, please subscribe and share it with others who might find strength in knowing they are not alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening. And remember that even in our darkest moments, there is always a path forward if we have the courage to take that first step.